Hello, welcome to Topper Machine. I'm Josh Topper. So you've seen my videos of welding hydraulic cylinder rods and welding conveyor rollers and things like that. And I've used these. These are a Sumner adjust-a-roll roller stand. They're for pipe welding and things like that. They got a 2,000 pound capacity. They're nice and high off the floor, unlike a lot of the commercially available stuff. And you can adjust them from 1/2 inch pipe to 36 inch pipe. Now these things are really nice. I like them. I got them really cheap on almost basically a garage sale. And the problem has been they're not powered. That's the big issue I've had. And if they're powered, I can just set up and make a nice weld all the way around instead of interrupted welds, which, yeah, it works, but I don't like it. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna convert this to a powered roller. Now, years ago, I bought a DC drive and motor to do a conversion on, or to build something like this, and never got around to it. And I just dug that out again. That's all working. And I've got some nice new wheels with a rubber tread, so it'll be safe for the hydraulic cylinder rods. And we'll go ahead and just get this thing pieced together. So an awesome feature of these stands is the fact that these rollers are easily removed with just a quick little release. And they've got this cutout on them. And so how do we make that cutout? Well, that's an easy one. My next door neighbor, Carl, who you know from some of my sawmill videos, he owns a steel shop in town, and they've got a laser table and a plasma table. And so I went over and had them laser the parts out. And here they are, out of 1/4 inch plate. So let's take a look at that footage and see how the laser works. Oh, that laser made quick work of those pieces. That's North 40 Steel in Spooner, Wisconsin. Really good guys to work with. Carl, like I said, is my neighbor and a good friend, and we do a lot of sawing together, so I send him work when I can. So now let's get some material in the Johnson here and cut our next pieces. So we got our pieces all cut, deburred, and let's get them set up in the mill here and get them drilled for our axle hole. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to take 4 of these plates and we're going to drill and tap a 3/8/16 hole in it for our motor mount and everything, so that we can actually remove that motor assembly if I don't like the way it performs, or if I just want to use it as a standard roller system. But we're going to do it with a tool called a DRAP, a drill tap. Now I've used these things over the years in a lot of different applications and they work really well for sheet metal, and I think 1/4 inch is about the max that I would want to do with it, but you got to be proficient at power tapping. So let's get this set up and give it a go. And we're going to go ahead and slow ourselves down to, we're going to go into back gear and down to 210 RPM, just so we don't screw up our tap and make it go easier. All right, so we're ready to go. Start out, since we're in back gear, start out in reverse. And we drill our hole. And reverse it out. These are a pretty impressive tool. I've been using them for a lot of years and they're getting harder to find. But they sure work nice. I'm only doing 4 of the plates, and I really don't need to do all 4, but I want to do 1 set with holes on both sides for mounting the drive, and 1 set without. And then we'll go ahead and build the fixture for welding them together. The other thing to be careful about with doing this is that you don't bottom out in your vise and screw up a perfectly good Kurt vise. So the next thing we need to do here is we need to get this set up so that we can weld these plates to our base plate. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a solid piece of bar stock that's drilled and tapped on each side, so we can run a bolt in on either side through this plate, and that'll hold it in position when it gets welded to the base. So we need to measure this. Our axle is 2.451, somewhere in there, 450-ish. So we're going to go a little bit bigger. We're going to make our piece of bar stock 2.455. Actually, let's go 2.460, because once we weld it on there, we'll be able to put the bolt in and suck it tight, so it won't be an issue. So let's go ahead and get our material in the line, and let's make this piece. All right, so the first thing we'll do here is face it off. Face off the first end, then I'll bring the tailstock in, center drill it all the way through, and then we'll flip it over and face the other end to the final length. Now when you're doing stuff like this, you position it in the chuck enough to get your caliper, so you can get your caliper down in here too and measure your overall length. So we'll go ahead and we'll face off this side and then measure it and see where we're at. All right, let's see where we're at. .472, so let's take another 12th thou. Perfect, that'll work. Now let's get the tap and tap them holes. And don't lock the tailstock because that'll screw you for sure. And just follow it in and then reverse it out. Then we'll go ahead and turn it around and do the other side. And that happens once in a while. I backed it out too far and popped the chuck out of the tang and the door's tapered. So there it is, all drilled and tapped. So here's our spacer, and this is, like I said, 10 thousandths wider than our axle. The tube here that runs, the bearings are on. And what we'll do is we'll take our plate and we just run our bolt through there, take our other plate and do the same thing. And now we have our set distance for our wheel to actually fit once it's all welded. So let's go ahead and take it back in the weld shop and then get these set up and welded to our base plates. So we're back here and it's all bolted together. It all looks pretty good. I just got to set it, position it the same, and then I set my square here for the same distance either side, and I just square it up, make sure it's true. And then we'll go ahead and tack it up. All right, it's tacked up nicely. I'll just weld this all together. So all four of them are welded up now. Let's go ahead and assemble the wheels into them. Now those fit really nice. Now we'll go ahead and make our adapter plate for our drive that we can mount on any position on these. Okay, so this is our plate that our motor drive is going to mount to, and what we need to do is affix this bearing, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm actually going to weld this puck on, weld that on, and then bore it for a nice press fit for our bearing. The other thing I got to do is put in 2 slots for the adjustment for our friction drive to our from this piece to our drive wheel, and then mount up our drive motor, and then it'll be a sprocket setup to get a gear reduction basically. So I'll go ahead and get this welded up, and then we'll get it over in the 4-jaw chuck and start boring it. So it's all welded up. We'll get it over in the 4-jaw and the lathe, and we'll bore this out to accept our bearing. Before we get this over in the 4-jaw, I'll let you know a little trick. I got to center this piece here in the 4-jaw. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to lay it out. We're going to find center, and then we're going to center drill it and use the tailstock to help us center the 4-jaw to start with, and then we'll fine tune it with the indicator. So I've got my 1-jaw reversed here, and that's to get me out a little bit easier to work with. But what I'm going to do to get my height is I'm going to use a parallel to rest it on this end. But the parallel is actually about 20 thou more than this jaw is high. So I'm just going to take a piece of strapping and put it over the jaw, and that'll get my difference. So now I should be able to just set this in here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to adjust it by eye close, and I'm a ways off, I see. I have to come out on this jaw. I'll go ahead and move everything up and get my center in place. Now the fun part will be getting this all centered up so I don't lose my parallel too. I can see I'm off a little bit. And in theory, that parallel should stay put just by the pressure of the tailstock. Once we start boring, I'll pull that out of there. And we clear. So right off the bat, I'm starting about 20 thousandths off. which is pretty good. So we'll go ahead and we'll adjust our side to side first. And there fell our parallel. Not a surprise. I'd call that good enough there. I see I got a little weld spatter on there, and the part's not perfectly round, I know that. But for what we're doing, this is perfect. It doesn't need to be any better than this. So we'll go ahead and we'll face this off, drill it, and then we'll start boring. All right, I'm going to start off slow, running about 250 RPM. And my center drill hole wasn't perfect, as I can see there, but like I said, this isn't rocket science. We're just making a place for a bearing. And now what I should have done was actually drilled that in the lathe before welding it to my plate, but it wasn't critical. And when I drill this, it'll be a little bit of a pain in the butt, but it won't be so bad. So we are at 870 right now, and our bearing is 550. So I'm going to take off another, I'm going to take about another 100 thou, I think. I want to leave a little bit, I want to get into this plate, but I want the bearing flush here, so 870 and 550, I'll probably leave 125 of this plate. So we'll go ahead and take it down to 675, I think will be a good finished thickness. Okay, now that I've got it face down to where I want it, I'm gonna go in with a screw machine drill. That'll keep the wander. Since my center is off a little bit, that should help me hit center again. So we'll just feed that in super slow so that it doesn't want to try to chase that center drill mark. And we're looking good. I'll go ahead and drill that all the way through. And I've switched out to a slightly larger drill. I slowed my RPM down, and we'll go ahead and open this thing up. Now this little boring bar loves the chatter, so we're going to actually shorten it up about as short as I can possibly get it, and still clear. And let's see where we are. And make sure I don't hit anything. Ooh, that's tight. Let's go to there. And hopefully we'll eliminate that chatter. I need to take 250 thou to start with on my bore, and then we'll go to the depth of the bearing so it's flush. All right, so I got my bore opened up where I want it. Now I'm just gonna touch off and then go in for my depth, and then we'll open it up, the bore up to the depth. So I'm just measuring this with a caliper. Quite honestly, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. And I've got about 25 thou to go, so we're gonna take 20 and then check it. And I'm running a back cut also just to take any tool pressure out of it. This thing has got a lot of spring to it. It's such a small bar. Yeah, and see, now that brought me right up where I want to be, actually. I don't want to take any more. I'm actually just a couple thou under. What I might wind up doing is taking some emery cloth and polish that a little bit, and we'll call that good. So we got everything indicated in here in our vise. First thing we're gonna do is mill our 2 slots that made up with our wheel so that it'll slide for adjusting the tension. And then we'll come over here, we'll mill the hole for our motor shaft, and then we'll mill slots for the motor to slide on so that we got some fine adjustment to tighten the chain. Okay, so I'm putting a 3/8 end mill in there to mill my slots for my bolts. Now, the phone's rang here 4 times now, and I've answered it 4 times in the last half hour. You heard the last phone call. That was a pre-recorded thing, Amazon, somebody's authorized a payment of $700 and some for an iPhone on my account. First off, I don't have an Amazon account. So after hanging up the first 3 times, I stuck it out and it was press 1 to speak to somebody. So I press 1 and it goes right to this Asian speaking woman. And I said, "Quit scamming me." And her exact response was, "F you, mother effer. You shut your effing mouth, blah, blah, blah." Well, we know that's a scam, so screw you, scammers. Anyway, I gotta get back to work. You're wasting my time. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and plunge this right through. It's only 1/4 inch plate. Nice and slow. It's a center cutting end mill. And there I'm through. And now we'll mill over. And I'm gonna widen this slot out just about 20 thousandths. 10 thou on the side, just to give myself plenty of bolt clearance. And generally you do that on your first pass, but of course I wasn't thinking. I was thinking about that Amazon scammer. And we'll go over to our next hole. Now you can see I'm coming in on my weld there. Sorry about that, my battery died there. We're gonna go ahead and change out to a larger end mill now and notch out our bearing sport here for clearance for the bolt. The bigger end mill, we're gonna go ahead and slow it down, especially since we're cutting into that weld. And we're gonna drop down to 210 RPM. So we change that belt and put it in back gear. So my end mill is pretty dull, but I'm going to continue pushing through just because I know this is how you guys would do it at home. You probably don't have the best tooling, but wow, this thing's bad. I don't like that, so I am gonna change it. Alright, we're going to give this guy a try. This one I found in the drawer too, and I'm guessing it's probably not much better, but I don't have anything else 7/8 inch, so we're going to go with it. Oh yeah, this guy is not any better. Well, we'll take our time, it's cutting. Actually, it seems like it's cutting pretty well. And there we are. And this is probably going to be my longest video. because quite honestly at this point I've got 4 weeks into building this thing. It's been so hectic here in the shop that I haven't had time to focus on it. Now this is where I'm going to start having problems. I'm climb milling now. God, they are just relentless. They won't stop calling and harassing me. That's 7 calls now in the last less than an hour. And it's always a cell phone. Hey, no. She don't want to cut. So now those are milled out. We got clearance for our bolts. Now we got to come down to this end and we'll mill our stuff for the motor mount. The next thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to take my hole saw and I'm going to go ahead and punch the hole for my motor shaft. And these hole saws work really well in this, 1/4, 3/8, even 1/2 inch. Just got to go slow. And if you're curious what we're up to for scammer call count, we are at 9 calls right now. I sure wish these people had something better to do, or at least would, die a slow and painful death. It's just rather annoying. So in my bag of tricks, I found a 281 end mill. I don't know if it's any good, but we're going to give it a go. And we'll just see what happens, because it's 1/4 inch bolts that hold that motor on. So. Alright, so there's the motor mount just sitting on there. That's pretty much how it'll go. It'll get bolted on this side to our drive wheel. Now we need to actually make the drive. It'll be a shaft that'll go through with a wheel on it that'll rub against the wheel to drive it, and then we'll use, wow, butterfingers. We'll use this small sprocket on the motor, and then I've got a much larger one we'll put over here to slow it down even further. This is 88 RPM, and that's actually a little fast for the larger diameter stuff I do, so we'll be able to slow it down quite a bit. So since the forejaw is up in the Lion, we're going to finish this part out in the old Monarch. And I got the material in the chuck here. we're going to do is we're going to turn this down, or first we're going to turn it down to everything we need, and then we'll knurl it for the drive. A little hazy in here, made a little heat, but I'm going to let this cool a while. It's a little too hot to measure, too hot to touch. We're going to let it cool, and then I'll come back and take my finished passes, get it down to my bearing size, and then turn the shaft down to 5/8 to accept the sprocket I have. Then we'll cut a relief in back here, knurl this, and cut it off, put a keyway in it, and we're done. Okay, we got a little ways to go. It's cooled off to the touch, so let's go ahead and get back to turning. Okay, so we only got about 5 thou to go. We'll just see where we're at. And we're close. Be able to polish that little bit off with some emery cloth and get it right down to a nice tight fit. So we'll go ahead and now we're going to take this down to our 5/8 inch. And because it's getting smaller, I'm only going to take about 50 at a crack. And we got about 25 thou to go, so let's take that last bit. Alright, we should be close enough there. I'm going to go ahead and come back over here and I'm going to put a 1/2 inch relief on my shaft here, just so I have clearance. And we'll go ahead and do it the easy way. All right, now we're going to move it out and knurl it. And to be honest with you, I haven't done hardly any knurling in a lot of years. So this might be a little bit of a learning experience myself. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Bring it in. Some good pressure on it. Some oil and there's a knurl there. That's a really fine roll though, and it's all I've got. I'll have to order some different knurling tools coming up here because I can see where this could be beneficial to have some better stuff. Well, I'd say that should work. So let's go ahead and get this thing cut off. We'll get the keyway put in it and get this assembled up. Well, we got all our pieces made. I'm going to go ahead and get this thing assembled, and the next scene, you'll see this thing in action. Well, there it is, all set up, ready to go. Looks nice. It won't mar up the tube. And let's turn it on and see what happens here. Looks like she'll work really well. Might be a bit fast on the high end yet, but we'll have to adapt that down someday. As I get into the bigger stuff, it'll be handy to have it a lot slower than that. Well, there it is. It's all done, and I'm really happy with the outcome. It's at a good working height. It's not on the floor like the commercially available stuff. It's all around, it's a much better setup. It's just off the ground. You can sit in a chair, you can kneel down and weld underneath, you know, whatever you need to do. You got a lot of flexibility with this height. And then having the drive just makes this a much better setup. I'm just glad I finally got it done. I just about was gonna order one of the commercially available ones just to get going, but now I've got mine done and I can do these rollers easier. I can do the hydraulic cylinder rods better. Just all around, it's gonna go so much better for me in the future here. So with that, we'll end here. And until next time, get out in your shop and get it done right the first time.